Tote bags and me go together like this. I carry my Trader Joe's one everywhere, or this quilted one, and I've gifted my fair share. So I wanted to share how to make one for anyone else who loves them as much as me. The tote bag that we're gonna be making in this video is gonna be a classic style. It is unlined, letting you know now, and I'm gonna share how to pattern it for anyone who wants to customize the size, as well as obviously how to sew. First things first, materials. For the fabric, I'm gonna be using a canvas-like material. Because it's unlined, I would definitely recommend a medium to heavier weight fabric so that it's decently sturdy. And then, depending on the fabric that you use, if it is heavier weight, you're gonna want a heavy-duty thread and then a thicker needle. I'm gonna be using a denim needle. And these next couple of items aren't necessary, but they are gonna make your life a little bit easier. The first one is a loop turner for the straps, and then the second one is gonna be a washable marker. Again, not necessary by any means, but it does help if you're more of a visual person when it comes to some of the seams. And then obviously, in addition to all of those things, you're gonna need your essentials, fabric scissors or rotary cutter, pins, and a sewing machine. I think that pretty much covers all the intro items, so let's get into the pattern.
For the pattern pieces, we'll need 2 side pieces, 1 bottom, 2 pockets, and 2 straps. The pink numbers are the measurements I used to create the tote bag in this video using 3/8 of an inch for seam allowance. And it ended up being roughly 12 inches tall, 12.5 inches long, and 6 inches wide, with around a 10.5 inch strap drop. And I would classify my tote as a medium size. If you want a larger Trader Joe's-ish size, you can reference the green measurements, which will get you a bag that's roughly 13.5 inches tall, 14 inches long, and 7 inches wide, with around a 12 inch strap drop. Just make a note for the green measurements: when you get to the boxed corner, instead of a 3-inch square, do a 3.5 inch square, which will all make sense when you get to that point. Now, if you want to customize the size, I'm going to go through the pattern math to follow, but if you don't care about this and just want to use my measurements, you can skip to the time on the screen to start the actual sewing tutorial. If you're still here and want to customize the size of your tote bag, maybe make a mini or an extra big one, here's how you can go about patterning. The length of the side pieces and bottom piece will be the same. The longer this measurement is, the longer your bag will be, and the measurement of the actual pattern piece is going to be the length plus 2 times seam allowance. For the height of the bottom piece, we're going to label it H1, and as far as the pattern piece, the measurement is going to be H1 plus 2 times seam allowance. The longer this measurement is, the taller the bottom section below the pocket is going to be. For the height of the side pieces, we'll label H2, and because we have to hem the top edge, the total fabric measurement will be H2 plus 3/4 of an inch for hem allowance plus seam allowance. Now, the longer this measurement is, the taller the main body of the bag will be. Next, for the straps, the width of the pattern piece will be the desired final width of your strap multiplied by 2 plus 2 times seam allowance. The length of the pattern piece for the strap will be the total length of your strap plus 2 times seam allowance. The longer the strap, the bigger the armhole opening will be, and remember to consider the fact that the strap is sewn over the side of the bag versus starting from the top edge. Lastly, the pockets. The width of the pattern piece will be the width of the pocket plus 2 times seam allowance, and the height of the pattern piece will be the height of the pocket plus seam allowance plus 3/4 of an inch for the top edge hem. Now, what's not reflected in the measurement of the pattern pieces individually, but has an impact on the final dimensions of the bag, is the box corner size. You'll see how this shows up later in the tutorial, but essentially the larger the box corner square, the deeper or wider the bag will be. And ultimately, the final dimensions of the bag, factoring in the box corner, will be around what is shown next to the mock-up. Alright, let's get to sewing. I've got all my pattern pieces cut out. We're gonna go ahead and start with the straps. Now, I didn't have long enough fabric, so I ended up sewing strips together to extend them, and if you're in the same boat, I'll link a video showing a method to reduce bulk when connecting the fabric. But the first official step is to fold the rectangle right sides together the long way and sew to create a tube. Then flip them both right side out. I was able to flip one by hand, however, it did take a while to work through, and this clip is in 5 times speed. So for the second, I used a loop turner, which I highly recommend adding to your sewing tool roster. After both straps are flipped right side out, we're going to give them a little press, and I found it easiest to press the seam open first and then maneuver it to the edge and press again. Now let's move on to the pockets. Fold the top edge down 3/8 of an inch and one more time to create a double fold hem. Once both pockets are hemmed, we can work on assembling the bag. Grab one of the side pieces, place it right side up, and mark the midpoint of the bottom. I'm just going to fold it in half and put a pin in the crease. Then we're going to mark the midpoint of the bottom of one of the pockets, and placing this right side up on the side piece, align the two midpoints. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but I drew a line on either side of the pocket to show the seam allowance, which will hopefully help visually for this next step. So grab a strap and pin one of the short ends to the bottom of the side piece so that it overlaps the seam allowance of the pocket. Do the same thing for the other end of the strap on the opposite side of the pocket, making sure the strap doesn't get twisted in the process. Lastly, we're going to place the bottom piece on top, wrong side up, and sew along the bottom edge. Since the tote is unlined, after the seam was sewed, I overlocked the raw edge to prevent fraying, just using a zigzag stitch on my regular machine to do this. Once complete, do everything over again for the other side. Breaking out the iron again, press the seam allowances toward the bottom piece on both sides because we're going to top stitch the seam allowance down by sewing a line right next to the existing seam about 1/8 of an inch away on the side of the bottom piece. Next, we're going to do one more set of overlocking stitches on either side of the bag. And we're doing this now instead of after sewing the side seam to be able to reduce the bulk when we eventually hem the top edge. Now fold the bag right sides together so that the top edges meet and pin everything in place so the seam connecting the bottom and side pieces align on either side and sew. I would definitely recommend taking your time here to make sure that the side seams match up. For the box corners, there are two options. The first is keeping the corners on the interior of the bag. To do this, flip the bag inside out, mark a 3-inch square from the bottom corner measuring from the seam line rather than the edge of the fabric on the side seam, then repeat on the other side of the bag. Then pinch the corners in the middle of the fabric on either side of the bag to flatten the square into a triangle so that the lines drawn on either side create a straight line. When you stick a needle through, it should hit the line on the other side. Then sew across that straight line and repeat for the other corner. The second option is to create the box corner on the exterior of the bag, which is what I'll be doing for this tote. The initial steps are going to be the same as the interior option, just with the bag flipped right side out. Mark a 3-inch square from the bottom corner on both sides of the bag, and although I didn't, I would recommend pressing the corner to make measuring easier here. Then pinch the corners in the middle of the fabric on either side of the bag to flatten the square again into a triangle so that the lines on either side create one straight line and sew across. Then go ahead and repeat for the other corner. Now that we have these two triangle flaps on the outside of the bag, we're going to press those triangles and up the side seam a bit, then fold the triangle up on its seam so that the point is in line with the side seam. And we're going to top stitch the triangle in place along the two top edges. This is technically a blind hem foot, but as you'll see in a lot of my videos, I like to use it for top stitching because it has a little guide. There are other tools out there, but this presser foot came with my sewing machine and it's just what I've grown used to using. Now with top stitching the triangle, I will say it took a little fidgeting with the fabric to get around the seam, and at the point was sewing over a lot of layers of fabric. To help get over all the fabric, I like to put a button under the back of my presser foot to level it out. And as you probably already guessed it, we're going to repeat top stitching the triangle on the other side. The next step is hemming the top edge of the bag. We're going to fold and press the top edge toward the inside of the bag 3/8 of an inch. At the side seam, I like to press the seam open to reduce the number of layers of fabric that we're going to have to sew over. Then fold and press once more to hide the raw edge and sew all the way around the opening of the bag. After we're done hemming the top edge, onto the final step, which is sewing down the straps. On one side of the bag, lay the strap flat, lining it up to overlap the seam allowance of the pocket and pin it down. We're going to start by top stitching up one side of the strap, and once we get to the top of the bag at the seam line, just below the actual top edge, sew across the strap and back down the other side. Repeat this process for all 4 ends of the straps. And at the top, when sewing across the strap, I like to reverse and sew back over to reinforce the seam. And then finally, this is optional, but I like the look of top stitching the rest of the handle. If you do this, be sure to fold back the flap at the top edge of the bag to keep it free. Keeping the top edge of the bag unsewn right at that strap can help reduce the chances of popping the seam when you're actually using the bag. Once the straps are all finished off, the bag is complete. Since I had all those washable marker lines, I just threw my bag in the wash to clean it up, and here's how it turned out.